Hello everyone, I'm Chris, and this is a full recap of Squid Game Season 1, released in 2021. If you end up enjoying this video and want to see more from us, then make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to know anytime we upload a new video. Over 3 years ago, Netflix released its most popular season of TV to date with the debut season of Squid Game, which currently ranks as the most viewed season ever produced by the streaming platform based on views in their first 91 days. The series is not only incredibly popular and beloved by audiences, however, as it's also critically acclaimed, with the show's lead, Jung-jae, having won the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series back in 2022, and the show's director, Hwang Dong-hyuk, winning the Emmy for Outstanding Directing for a Drama Series, in addition to the series receiving several other nominations. And of course, with that success came the announcement that the series would be getting a second season, which will now be finally premiering on December 26th. So ahead of Season 2, we've decided to first take a look back at Season 1's 9 episodes and run down everything that took place so you can be caught up on everything you'll need to know before the new season. The series opens introducing us to a man named Sung Gi-hoon, a broke gambling addict who now lives with his mother after the traumatic loss of his job as a factory worker making car parts about 10 years ago, which he attempted to get back by organizing a protest with his coworkers, who'd also been laid off at the same time. But the protest soon devolved into a violent riot that sadly resulted in one of Gi-hoon's coworkers being killed in front of him. After this, Gi-hoon tried and failed to start up his own chicken shop and has now found himself in over 400 million won, or about $300,000 US of debt, not only to the bank, but also some notably bad loan sharks. Due to his financial and personal struggles, Gi-hoon's also struggled to be a very good father to his daughter, Ga-young, although they do seem to still have a loving relationship. But sadly, it seems he soon may never be able to see his daughter again, as his ex-wife and Ga-young's stepdad are planning on moving with her to America. And since Gi-hoon has no money, he'll probably never be able to visit. This rough day is made a bit better, however, when he's approached by a man asking if he'd like to play a game of dakji with him for 100,000 won. Or about $70 US, which Gi-hoon at first declines since he's broke. But the man suggests that only Gi-hoon receives the cash if he wins, and if the man wins, he just gets to slap Gi-hoon in the face, and Gi-hoon agrees. So they play several rounds, with Gi-hoon eating many losses and slaps, but he does manage to get a few wins under his belt as well before calling it quits and returning home. Although, as he leaves, the man also gives him his card in case he ever wants to play another game for even more money in the future. After taking the rest of the night to think on it, Gi-hoon ultimately decides to make the call and is promptly picked up by a masked individual in a pink jumpsuit before being hit with some knockout gas and later awakening in a green jumpsuit of his own numbered 456 inside a huge room filled with hundreds of other people, including the likes of a young woman named Kang Se-byuk and numbered 67. Who we'd actually met previously when she'd managed to pickpocket Gi-hoon after one of his few successful days of gambling. But it seems he's not the only one she's wronged or been wronged by, as she's seen being berated and attacked by a gangster named Jung Duk-soo and numbered 101. Here, Gi-hoon also meets an elderly man named Oh-il-nam and numbered 1, who's revealed to be suffering from dementia and to have a tumor in his head, but still appears quite happy despite the circumstances. Before Gi-hoon is then reunited, much to his surprise, with his childhood friend Cho Sang-woo, given number 218. The reason Gi-hoon's so shocked to see him here is because he was under the belief that Sang-woo had carved out a successful career for himself. But it turns out, Sang-woo's now found himself 6 billion won, or about $4.2 million US in debt, after siphoning money off his clients' balances when working at Joy Investments and failing to turn a profit after investing said money in derivatives and future options. The group of 400 plus is then also joined by 9 more guards in pink jumpsuits, with 8 of them wearing black masks with a white circle, while the 9th wears one with a white square, and is shown to be the superior, as he's the one who informs the group that they'll all be participating in 6 different games over the course of the next 6 days, with the winners of all 6 games receiving a large cash prize at the end. And while some are reluctant to participate due to the limited information given of how these games will play out, each of their financial struggles convince them to continue forward to the first game, revealed to be red light, green light. However, this is unlike any game of red light green light they've played before, as shockingly, the players who fail to remain still on red light are suddenly killed, understandably resulting in a moment of chaos that leads to more and more participants being killed, until those who'd managed to avoid panicking attempt to continue the game as intended, with many of them succeeding in making it to the finish line, including the likes of Il-nam, Sae-byuk, and Dak-soo, as well as Sang-woo, while Gi-hoon, just as he's able to reach the end, inadvertently trips over another player's corpse, nearly resulting in him being seen moving. But thankfully, he's caught by another player named Ali Abdul, and numbered 199, who holds him still until they're able to run once again, allowing them both to make it past the finish line before time expires, while everyone else who had failed to do so are shot and killed, bringing the total players eliminated up to 255. Frightened by what just took place, many of the remaining 201 participants beg the guards to bring them back home, but they're instead reminded by one of the managers of the consent forms they'd previously signed, which clearly stated that the players are not allowed to stop playing, and that if they choose to stop, they will be eliminated. But Sang-woo also points out that the form had a third clause, stating that if the majority of players vote to stop playing, the games can be terminated. So the manager agrees to let them take a vote, although only after revealing how much money they'd be passing up on, as the prize money totals at 45.6 billion won, or about $32 million to be split amongst the winners. This revelation proves to be very influential to many of the players' votes, with some of those who'd begged to return home now voting to stay, such as player 212, real name Han Min-yo, as well as Sang-woo and even Sae-byuk, while Gi-hoon, Dak-soo, Ali, and Il-nam each vote to terminate them. And ultimately, the votes are split 101 to 100 in favor of terminating the games. So the manager bids them farewell for now. However, he does note that they'll be reaching out to each of them again soon, and if the majority of them wish to re-enter the games, they may resume. So everyone's dropped back off near where they were first picked up, with Sang-woo and Ali ending up in Yeouido together, despite Ali living in Ansan. And Sang-woo, upon learning this, gives him some money for the bus so he doesn't have to walk all that way, a gesture Ali greatly appreciates. Although no longer faced with the possibility of death, the personal issues each player had been facing prior to their arrival at the facility are still there waiting for them when they return, as we learn that Sang-woo, on top of being in a staggering amount of debt, now also has a warrant out for his arrest, while Ali's been trying and failing to put together enough money for him to return to his home country of Pakistan with his wife and son. Sae-byuk's been trying to get her mother out of North Korea and her brother Chol out of a group home so their family can be together again. And Dak-soo's been forced into hiding due to the several debts he owes to his fellow criminals. For Gi-hoon though, things have gotten even worse, as after failing to convince the police of what he and the other players were put through, he learned that his mother has severe diabetes, resulting in a condition that may require her having her foot amputated after treatment. But it doesn't seem she'll be able to get any anyway, since neither her nor Gi-hoon can afford to pay for it, thanks to them having blown every last dime to their name. Still though, it isn't until Gi-hoon improbably runs into Il-nam and discusses the latter's plans of re-entering the game that Gi-hoon decides to re-enter himself, along with those we've previously mentioned, who all allow themselves to be picked up and knocked out by the masked guards once again, although this time they're covertly joined on their journey by Detective Hwang Dong-hyuk, who, back when Gi-hoon had attempted to explain the previous game's events at the police station, had overheard his story and also caught a glimpse of the card he'd been given, which much to his confusion, Jun-ho then also found upon arriving at his brother In-ho's apartment later that night to check in on him, since he and his family hadn't been able to contact him for days at this point. So Jun-ho tracked Gi-hoon down to better understand his story, hoping it could help him find his brother. But Gi-hoon refused to elaborate this time since he'd been planning to re-enter, forcing Jun-ho to instead follow Gi-hoon to the pickup and all the way from there to the facility, which he manages to sneak his way into after blindsiding and incapacitating one of the guards, later revealed to be number 29, and stealing their jumpsuit and circle mask. Meanwhile, we see that 187 of the 201 players have decided to re-enter the game, and the returning participants quickly begin forming their own groups to better one another's chances at survival, with Gi-hoon convincing Sang-woo, Ali, and Il-nam to join up with him, while Deok-soo partners up with a few other menacing individuals, as well as the aforementioned Min-yo, who, recognizing that he's the biggest guy here, seduced him into letting her join his team. Interestingly though, while all the other players are seeking help and protection from others, it appears player 111, who we hadn't yet been introduced to and whose real name is Byung-gi, may have someone specifically watching over him, as he discovers a letter within his breakfast that we later learn revealed to him the name of their next game. He isn't the only player to uncover the game prior to it though, as Sang-woo, based on the shapes the guards have presented in front of the players to choose from, quickly figures out that their next game will be Dalgona, for which each player must choose between a triangle, circle, star, and umbrella, before then being handed a needle and a Dalgona candy with that shape stamped into it, which in order to win, they have to carve out of the honeycomb without breaking the shape within 10 minutes. However, Sang-woo selfishly decides against warning the rest of his team of this, since he only really seems to care whether Gi-hoon lives or dies, and instead says they should each just pick a different shape to play it safe, allowing him to pick the easiest shape for the game, a triangle. But unfortunately, Gi-hoon ends up choosing the most difficult of the shapes, an umbrella. So, while the likes of Sang-woo, Il-nam, Ali, Sebyuk, Min-yo, Deok-soo, and Byung-gi all passed the second game, with the latter also then being snuck into a separate section of the building by a pair of guards, Gi-hoon struggles to carve out the umbrella as the timer continues to tick. But after spending most of the allotted time carving with the needle, he eventually realizes that he could just melt the honeycomb from the back and get through the shape's lining that way. So he repeatedly licks the back of the candy, and just before the time expires, manages to remove the umbrella, preventing his own elimination, while the remaining 79 players who failed to complete the game are gunned down and killed. Although one of these players, No Sung-hun, or player 119, actually manages to get the jump on one of the guards and take his gun, which he then uses to force them to reveal their identity, only for them to be some kid. And this revelation prompts Sang-hun to end his own life, while the young guard is then suddenly shot and killed as well by a man in all black, also known as the front man, who we've seen pulling the strings from behind the scenes previously, and who reminds the others that if the players learn who they are, they will be killed. Meanwhile, we see where the two guards had taken Byung-gi, as he's revealed to actually be a doctor, and so they've begun using his talents to remove the organs of eliminated players to sell for their own profit. In addition, there are also two other guards in on the operation. However, one of them was supposed to be number 29, the guard previously dumped into the ocean by Jun-ho, so since he's not around, number 28 is left to make the delivery on his own. Back in the dormitory, the remaining 108 players are given their meals for the day, which only consists of a boiled egg and a soda, particularly frustrating Deok-soo, so Min-yo suggests they just cut the line for seconds, which leaves 5 players without a meal for themselves. So a woman numbered 198 quickly rats Deok-soo's team out, prompting one of the players they stole from, player 271, to confront and attempt to grab his drink from him, resulting in the bottle shattering on the ground. So Deok-soo angrily beats the man to death, and the guards decide to do nothing else but dispose of the body. This is soon revealed to have all been part of the plan, as the guards had intentionally given the players less food to create tension between them and cause an all-out war that night. And that's exactly what happens when the lights go out, with Deok-soo starting things up by killing the woman who snitched on them, while the rest of his team attacks and kills several more players. Deok-soo then shifts his attention to Sebyuk, but she's able to hold him off thanks to help from Gi-hoon, Sang-woo, and Ali, while we see a frightened Il-nam has climbed up to the very top of the beds to beg for the game to be stopped, and shortly thereafter it is, after a total of 27 players had been killed. After everything settled down, Min-yo and Deok-soo, happy with how things went, head off to the bathroom to have sex, and Min-yo takes this opportunity to really solidify their partnership, having him swear that they'll stick together all the way to the end, and he promises they will. Ahead of the next game though, Deok-soo is approached by Byung-gi, who, aware of what the next game will be, and so seeking his help, informs the former of what the game will be as well, for which they've been ordered to form teams of 10. So Deok-soo promptly kicks Min-yo off his team and builds one solely of men. Sang-woo, although not knowing what the game will be, also believes it would be best for them to find more men to team with, since they already have an elderly man and now a woman on theirs. So he has them split up to recruit one man each. But while Sang-woo, Ali, and Gi-hoon are able to do so, Se-byuk ends up recruiting a girl named Ji-young and numbered 240, and Il-nam just fails at recruiting anyone. So they're stuck adding Min-yo as their final member. With each of the 8 teams formed, it's revealed that they'll next be playing a game of tug of war, with 2 teams placed across one another atop separate platforms, with the goal of tugging their opponents off the ledge. And having built the strongest unit by far, Deok-soo's team is able to convincingly defeat their opponents and send them falling to their deaths. Things for Gi-hoon's team, however, are looking far worse, as they unluckily end up pitted against the only other team of all men. But ahead of their contest, Il-nam reveals that when he was younger, he was actually incredible at tug of war and knows exactly how they can overcome the odds. So they do their best to do exactly as he told them, and his coaching, as well as some luck, ultimately helps them survive. Following the final 2 rounds of the game, we see as number 28 marks one of the caskets and motions for the disguised Junho, who's impressively managed to remain undetected throughout all this, to follow him. And so Junho travels with him down to the doctor's operating room. The other 2 guards are still very frustrated with him, since his absence last time actually resulted in them being unable to make the delivery, but they still choose to continue their working relationship. And after the operation, Junho heads off with number 28 to make the delivery, while Byung-gi demands the other 2 guards tell him the name of the next game, but they claim they haven't yet been told, infuriating the doctor, who then suddenly pulls a scalpel on one of them, and when they try to fight back, is forced to repeatedly stab him to death with it, prompting the other guard to attack in retaliation, but the doctor is able to escape before any further damage can be done. He's eventually caught up to in the room where Dalgona had been played, before the guard chasing him is then suddenly shot and killed by the front man, who expresses great disappointment in them having interfered with the fairness of their games, before having his men gun down Byung-gi as well. Meanwhile, Junho, after heading down the exit with number 28, is then confronted by the latter, who's actually been suspicious of him since the moment he'd heard him speak, but since he still needed his help making the delivery, he's waited till now to pull a knife on him, forcing Junho to unmask, before Junho then pulls out his gun and forces the guard to do the same. With a gun to the guard's head, Junho questions him about the whereabouts of his missing brother, but the guard claims not to know who that is. However, reveals that if he wants to find his brother, he may be able to within the Squid Game archives, kept in the front man's room. So after receiving directions to it, Junho kills the man and sneaks his way inside, soon locating the archives for every Squid Game in history. But within the current game's binder, he's unable to find any record of his brother. However, he does come across a list of all the game's winners, and on this, he's able to find his brother's name, revealing he'd actually won back in 2015. Meanwhile, the front man and his workers soon discover the bodies of the others who'd interfered with the game, outside of Junho's of course, so he orders his men to search for the missing number 29 while he shifts his focus to the day's game, for which the remaining 39 players are asked to split up into teams of 2. Immediately, Sang-woo forms a partnership with Ali rather than Gi-hoon, which visibly upsets the latter, but he's ultimately able to form a team with Il-nam despite them being at a clear physical disadvantage. While we also see Deok-soo team up with his right-hand man throughout the games thus far, player 278, and Se-byuk team up with Ji-young, partly due to no one else wanting to team with a girl, but also because Ji-young has seemingly taken a liking to Se-byuk. Since there's an odd number of players left though, thanks to Byung-gi's elimination, that leaves one of them without a teammate, Min-yo. So while the others are escorted to the next game, she's dragged out of the room by the guards. For their 4th game, each player is given a bag of 10 marbles, with which they can play any game of their and their partner's choice to decide which of the 2 of them will walk out with all 20 marbles, while the other is eliminated. A shocking and sinister revelation, as many of these pairs have formed friendships, but nonetheless, they continue forward as instructed. Deok-soo and player 278 don't appear to have a real bond like many of the other players had formed, however, and actually seem eager to eliminate one another, which player 278 nearly manages to do after winning 5 of Deok-soo's 10 marbles. But after Deok-soo demands they play a different game, he's able to win all his marbles back and ultimately comes out victorious, resulting in player 278's death. Sang-woo and Ali, meanwhile, reluctantly play against one another as well, and much to Sang-woo's confusion and frustration, Ali manages to win round after round, leaving Sang-woo with only one marble left and nearly causing him to violently lash out, which was previously stated to be against the rules. So he quickly apologizes and suggests another way for them to both move on to the next round, explaining that since all they need to win is to gain possession of their opponent's marbles, then maybe they could play against another team who are also struggling to come to a decision and pit their 20 marbles against the other team's 20. And Ali agrees to give it a try. To put Ali's mind at ease though, Sang-woo puts together a necklace for him to hold on to and keep an eye on his bag of 19 marbles while they split up and search for another team to compete against. However, shortly after they split, it's revealed that Sang-woo's still in possession of Ali's marbles, as the bag he'd given him turns out to actually just be full of rocks, which Ali only realizes after Sang-woo's turned in the full 20, before Ali's then sadly shot and killed. Unlike everyone else, Se-byuk and Ji-young decide against drawing out this process over an entire game, and agree to play a single round for all the marbles. So in the meantime, Ji-young tries to learn a bit about why Se-byuk's here, and learns of her family's situation and her hopes of giving them a better life if she makes it out, while Ji-young also opens up a bit about what she's gone through, revealing that the first dead body she ever saw was her mother's, where her father stood beside her with a bloody knife. So Ji-young then killed her father with the same knife, for which she was then imprisoned. And when she was eventually released, she was then approached about joining the games. With the clock winding down, the two finally decide to go ahead with their game, which Ji-young ultimately decides to throw, explaining that, despite her best efforts, she couldn't think of any reason or plan for her to make it out of here over Se-byuk. So she encourages her to win it all for her family, before also being eliminated. One of the final teams left playing ends up being Il-nam and Gi-hoon, as a result of a pretty significant amount of time being wasted due to a wandering Il-nam and his dementia. However, this also later helps Gi-hoon avoid his own death, as he finds himself with only one marble left after a few rounds, but is saved thanks to Il-nam for getting the result, so he reluctantly uses this to his advantage several times until Il-nam's the one with just a single marble left. Although before they can play the final round, Il-nam begins wandering once again. Soon enough, Gi-hoon's able to catch up to him and seemingly snap him back to reality, as Il-nam suggests they put all their marbles on the line in one last round, which Gi-hoon claims makes no sense. So Il-nam questions whether taking advantage of his friend makes sense as well, shocking a guilt-ridden Gi-hoon, who Il-nam then willingly hands his final marble and thanks for making this all a good experience before being eliminated from the game as well. Upon returning to the dormitory, the remaining 16 players are surprised to find Min-yo already there, still alive and well, as she was just allowed to move on to the next round after failing to find a partner. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the frontman awaits the arrival of the VIPs, a collection of rich men who help finance the games by betting their own money on who they think will win, and who've requested to watch the final two games in person. The frontman, though, is also still dealing with the missing intruder, whose identity they soon uncover upon finding the body of the real number 29 washed up on the northern coast of the island with Junho's police badge. However, the VIP's arrival forces him to put his manhunt on hold for now, and it also serves as a distraction to allow Junho to sneak his way into the watch party by incapacitating and assuming the identity of one of the VIP servants. So, with the VIPs in attendance, the remaining players are taken to their fifth game, for which they're asked to pick a number from 1 to 16 to decide the order in which they'll be playing. And we see as Deok-soo ends up with number 9, Min-yo chooses 11, Sang-woo gets 14, Se-byuk gets 15, and Gi-hoon gets 16. With that, the name of the game is then revealed to be Glass Stepping Stones, during which each player will have to walk across a bridge made up of 16 pairs of stepping stones made from one of two types of glasses, one strong enough to hold the weight of 2 people, and one that'll break if just one person steps on it. And whoever fails to make it to the end of the bridge before the 16-minute timer expires will be eliminated. This basically means certain death for those towards the front of the line, as players 96, 308, 62, 21, 453, 244, 151, and 407 all ultimately end up falling to their death, leaving 6 steps left as Deok-soo now finds himself stuck at the front of the line. So he decides against moving forward and announces to the others that if they want to make it past, they'll have to go ahead of him, which the player behind him, player 322, real name Jung-jae, refuses to do, prompting the player behind him, Min-yo, to shove him into Dok-soo, resulting in Min-tae's death. With it clear that Dok-soo has no intention of moving forward, Min-yo seemingly decides to go ahead of him. That is until she then suddenly wraps her arms around him, and while he begs and pleads for her to let go, finally gets revenge for abandoning her by sending them both crashing through the next panel into their deaths. This leaves Sang-woo, Se-byuk, Gi-hoon, and 2 other players remaining, with the next in line, player 360, immediately falling to his death as well, while the player following him, player 17, real name Do Jung-seo, is able to avoid suffering the same fate thanks to his past working as a glass manufacturer, enabling him to see the differences in the panels by their reflections and make it to the penultimate step. However, his ability is soon rendered useless when the lights around him are turned off. And so, with him struggling to choose as they reach the final 30 seconds, Sang-woo suddenly pushes him onto one of the final 2 panels, through which Jung-seo falls to his death, allowing Sang-woo and a shocked Se-byuk and Gi-hoon to reach the end as the buzzer sounds, followed by the remaining panels suddenly imploding and each of them being wounded by the shrapnel, although they don't appear to have suffered any severe injuries. Let's now quickly wind back the clock for a moment, as during the VIP's watch party of the game, a disguised Jun-ho inadvertently and disturbingly caught the sexual attention of one of the VIPs labeled VIP4, who then attempted to unmask Jun-ho so he could get a better look, but Jun-ho managed to instead convince him to take them somewhere they can be alone. And once there, Jun-ho then pulled his gun on the VIP and forced him to reveal everything he knew on camera. Soon enough, the frontman became aware of VIP4's disappearance and subsequently found him incapacitated in the bathroom, while Jun-ho manages to escape the facility through the hidden exit and into the ocean using one of their oxygen tanks. Upon making it to shore, he attempts to send all the evidence he's gathered to the police chief, but due to poor signal, none of his messages can deliver. And soon enough, the frontman and his men arrive on shore as well, forcing Jun-ho on the run until he finds himself completely cornered at the edge of a cliff. So as the frontman slowly approaches, Jun-ho fires a shot into his shoulder, but despite this, the frontman orders his men not to return fire, and he instead offers to let Jun-ho live if he comes with him, before unmasking himself to reveal that he's actually Jun-ho's brother, In-ho, much to Jun-ho's shock and confusion, who still refuses to go with him. So In-ho raises his gun and shoots his brother as well, sending Jun-ho falling back into the ocean into his presumed death. Back in the dormitory, Gi-hoon confronts Sang-woo about his dastardly actions, resulting in a harsh verbal back and forth between them before they and Se-byuk are met by a group of guards, the manager of whom informs them that for making it to the final round, they'll all be rewarded with a delicious dinner, to which the 3 are then taken, and once they've finished their meal, the guards leave them with just the knives they'd eaten with, that they each promptly decide to hold on to for protection. After lights out that night, all 3 of them try their best to stay awake in case the others attempt to kill them. However, Se-byuk is seen dozing off by Gi-hoon, so he approaches her and proposes they team up for whatever the final game is to defeat Sang-woo so they can both walk out of here with the money. Although Se-byuk instead asks Gi-hoon to make a deal with her, that if only one of them manages to make it out of here, the other will look after the ones they love, before she then suddenly collapses and is revealed to be bleeding out as a result of a wound she'd suffered at the end of the previous game. So Gi-hoon rushes to get help, but when the guards enter, they come with a coffin in hand, as it's revealed that Sang-woo had gone and killed Se-byuk himself, which prompts Gi-hoon to rush towards him, but they're quickly separated. Now down to 2 players, the 2 are taken to participate in the 6th and final game, known as Squid Game, a game Gi-hoon and Sang-woo actually used to play together as kids, in which the offensive player or attacker, who's only able to hop on 1 foot until he crosses the squid-shaped court's neck, must enter said court, run past the defender, and tap the area inside the squid's head in order to win, while the defender must block the attacker's advance and force them out of bounds to secure the win for themselves. And as a result of a coin toss, Gi-hoon is made the attacker and Sang-woo is made the defender. For this version of the game though, they're also informed that if a situation arises in which either player is unable to continue playing, then the last player standing is the winner. So Sang-woo prepares his knife as Gi-hoon hops around the court to one end of the squid's neck, and to thwart Sang-woo's attack, Gi-hoon throws sand in his eyes, allowing him to make it across the neck, remove his handicap, and enter the court. Gi-hoon then also pulls out his knife, and the two promptly enter a brawl, which after both men have their blades knocked out of their hands, Sang-woo manages to get control of, beginning to strangle Gi-hoon with his jacket and nearly dragging him out of bounds, before Gi-hoon manages to land a strike and knock him back. But this inadvertently allows Sang-woo to grab hold of a nearby knife and stab him through the leg and abdomen with it, before then winding up one final stab. But Gi-hoon incredibly blocks it with his hand and knocks Sang-woo back again by biting the skin off of his ankle and landing a series of strikes. And after tearing the blade out of his own hand, he then goes for a fatal stab of his own. However, rather than killing Sang-woo, he instead sinks the knife into the ground and asks that they end the game here, since if he and Sang-woo both vote to stop the games, then per the consent forms they'd signed when they first arrived, the games will be terminated and they'll both be permitted to return home. But Sang-woo chooses to instead stab himself in the neck and asks that Gi-hoon help his mother when he returns home as he dies in his arms. With that, Gi-hoon's taken back home and is given a bank account filled with all of his prize money. But while he now has all the money he could ever ask for, he's left deeply disturbed by everything he'd gone through and witnessed. And making things even worse, when he finally returns home, he finds his mother lying dead on the floor, having passed as a result of her untreated illness. Because of all that's associated with the money he'd won, Gi-hoon struggles to spend any of it over the course of the next year, leading to him eventually receiving another card similar to the one he'd been given for the games, but this time reading December 24th, 11:30 p.m., Sky Building 7th floor, from your Ganbu, a word he'd only heard from one other person, Oh Il-nam, ahead of their participation in the marble game, which he used to describe someone you share a close bond with. And upon his arrival at the Sky Building, it's revealed that not only is Il-nam still alive, but it was he who created the Squid Games. Before he explains any of this, Il-nam first draws Gi-hoon's attention to a homeless man who's been sitting on the street for hours, and he proposes that they play one last game. If no one offers to help the man before the clock strikes midnight, he gets to take everything Gi-hoon has. But if someone does help him, Gi-hoon wins. And Gi-hoon, no longer caring about the money, agrees. Although he also adds the caveat that if he wins, he'll kill Il-nam without a second thought. Il-nam then goes on to explain that when you have too much money, at some point, no matter what you do, it just gets boring. So he decided to create a way for him to have fun again, resulting in the creation of the Squid Games based on the games he used to love playing as a kid. However, after years of spectating, he then received his cancer diagnosis, and so decided before he died that he actually wanted to participate in one of them, so he could feel something one last time. In a large part thanks to Gi-hoon, it turned out to be the most fun he'd had in a very long time, which doesn't give Gi-hoon any comfort whatsoever, and just makes him even more disturbed than before. But he's soon able to regain some faith in humanity when someone actually arrives to help the homeless man, just as the clock strikes 12, although it's unclear if Il-nam was able to witness his defeat, as when Gi-hoon looks over, he's revealed to have passed away. Still, with his faith restored, Gi-hoon decides to clean himself up and do what he'd originally set out to when he'd first arrived on the island. In particular, be a better father to his daughter. Although, before that, he first fulfills the wishes of Se-byuk and Sang-woo, heading to the orphanage and meeting Se-byuk's brother Chol, who he then later introduces to Sang-woo's mother so she can look after him while he's in America to see his daughter. And with them, he also leaves a suitcase filled with stacks of money. As he's making his way through the train station to the airport though, he comes across the man he'd played Dakji with over a year ago now, taking advantage of another poor soul, so he rushes after him, but the man manages to hop on the train, and Gi-hoon instead takes the card from the man he'd been playing with and implores him not to go. Then later, despite making it all the way to the airport, and nearly onto the plane, Gi-hoon suddenly stops in his tracks and decides to call the number on the back of the card. And on the other end, he's spoken to by In-ho, who tells him for his own good to just get on the plane. But Gi-hoon instead begins marching back out of the airport as the season ends. And that was our recap of Squid Game Season 1. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful in any way, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And also, let us know in the comments below what you thought of Squid Game's first season and what you expect for Season 2. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.